gun doing here?
Adaeze stopped breathing. She stared at the gun for 5 full seconds. Then she scrambled backward off the bed, knocked over her glass of water, and pressed herself against the far wall with both hands over her mouth. "What?" she whispered to no one. "What?" Her heartbeat was so loud she could hear it in her ears. She looked at the open briefcase on the bed like it was a sleeping snake. Then she looked at the door. Then at the window 14 floors up. Then back at the briefcase. She had to go to the airport. She had to call someone. She had to. The knock on her hotel room door was not loud. It was 3 precise, unhurried knocks. The kind that don't ask for permission. The kind that assume the door will open. Adaeze froze. How did these get into Adaeze's briefcase? Let's go back to where it all started. The Incheon International Airport hummed with a kind of organized chaos that only a world-class hub could produce. A symphony of rolling luggage wheels, multilingual announcements, and the sharp click of heels against polished floors. Overhead lights bathed everything in a cold, bright white, and the air smelled faintly of jet fuel and duty-free perfume. Adaeze Okonkwo had been awake for 19 hours. She stood at baggage carousel 7, shifting her weight from one foot to the other, her long braids pulled over one shoulder, the edges of her lash extensions slightly blurred from the sleep she'd tried, and failed, to steal somewhere over the East China Sea. She was 28 years old, a textile designer from Lagos, Nigeria, and she had saved for 2 years, 3 months, and 11 days to be standing exactly here in South Korea, for 14 glorious, unplanned, no-itinerary days of absolute freedom. She had no plan. That was the plan. She watched the conveyor belt churn, dragging mismatched bags past her in slow, indifferent loops. Around her, families reunited. Businessmen wheeled pristine carry-ons with mechanical efficiency, and a group of Korean teenagers erupted in laughter over something on a shared phone screen. Adaeze smiled at nothing in particular. She was here. She was actually here. Then she spotted it. A sleek burgundy briefcase with a brushed gold clasp, gliding toward her on the belt. She blinked. That was hers. It had to be. She'd bought it at Balagan Market 6 months ago, chosen specifically because the color was unusual, the kind of dark wine red that caught light like a bruise healing into beauty. It had a small brass clasp on the left side and a thin scuff mark near the bottom wheel that she'd made herself when she scraped it against her apartment doorframe on the morning she left Lagos. She reached forward and pulled it off the belt without a second thought. It felt slightly heavier than she remembered, but she attributed that to the exhaustion warping her perception. She slung her tote bag over her shoulder, extended the briefcase handle with a satisfying click, and walked confidently through the arrival doors into the electric brightness of Seoul. She did not notice, as the carousel continued its rotation, that her actual briefcase, her actual identical burgundy case, emerged 15 seconds later, circling the belt in lonely loops. She did not notice the man who watched her go. He was standing 40 feet away, still as a shadow in a gray tailored suit that cost more than most people's cars. His name was Park Joon-ho. He was 34 years old. He had a jaw cut like a fault line, eyes the color of deep water before a storm, and a reputation in certain circles that made grown men lower their voices. He watched the African woman disappear through the automatic doors with her rolling case. His case, and for exactly 3 seconds he said nothing. Then he turned to the man beside him, a broad-shouldered figure who went by the name Sang, and spoke in a low, even voice. "Find out who she is. Where she's staying. Do not touch her. Yet. The Lotte City Hotel in Myeongdong was everything Adaeze had imagined and more. Her room on the 14th floor looked out over the Seoul skyline, a glittering arrangement of towers and neon that pulsed like a living thing as evening fell. She stood at the window for a long time, pressing her forehead lightly against the cool glass, watching taxi lights trace yellow lines across wet streets below. She had showered, eaten room service tteokbokki, which was aggressively spicier than expected, and she loved every punishing bite. And now she sat cross-legged on the bed in a hotel robe, finally cracking open the briefcase to retrieve her charger. The clasp resisted her for a moment, and she frowned. She tried again, clicked open, and everything inside her went very, very still. The briefcase was not hers. There was no charger. No travel journal with the sunflower cover. No small Ziploc bag of Nigerian snacks she'd packed for emergencies. Instead, the interior was divided with custom foam padding, the kind built specifically to hold things in place. And the things it held were a matte black hard drive sealed in an evidence bag, 3 burner phones still in their packaging, a folded document in Korean that she couldn't read but which had red stamps across it that looked deeply official and deeply serious, and beneath all of it, coiled like a sleeping thing that she could not yet process, a Glock 19 in a soft leather holster. Adaeze stopped breathing. She stared at the gun for 5 full seconds. Then she scrambled backward off the bed, knocked over her glass of water, and pressed herself against the far wall with both hands over her mouth. "What?" she whispered to no one. "What?" Her heartbeat was so loud she could hear it in her ears. She looked at the open briefcase on the bed like it was a sleeping snake. Then she looked at the door. Then at the window 14 floors up. Then back at the briefcase. She had to go to the airport. She had to call someone. She had to. The knock on her hotel room door was not loud. It was 3 precise, unhurried knocks. The kind that don't ask for permission. The kind that assume the door will open. Adaeze froze. She did not move. Did not breathe. Maybe they had the wrong room. Maybe it was housekeeping. Maybe. "Miss Okonkwo." The voice on the other side of the door was deep, unhurried, and spoke her name with perfect pronunciation. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." The air in the room turned to ice water. Her eyes flew to the briefcase. The gun. The hard drive. The documents. Then to the door. How did he know her name? How did he know her room? She grabbed the briefcase, snapped it shut, and stood in the center of the room with it clutched against her chest like a shield. Her mind racing through options that all felt equally terrible. 3 more knocks. Calmer than the first set, which somehow made them worse. "I am not here to harm you," the voice said in accented but precise English. "I only need my property. If you open the door, this will take 2 minutes and you will never see me again." Right, Adaeze thought, her internal voice sharp with Lagos girl survival instinct. That is exactly what someone who is here to harm me would say. She looked at the briefcase in her hands. She had his property. She was in a foreign country. She had no idea who this person was. And no one, not her mother in Enugu, not her best friend Chisholm back in Lagos, not a single soul on this earth, knew exactly which hotel room she was in right now. She was completely, devastatingly alone. Her hand moved toward the hotel phone. She would call the front desk. It would. "Miss Okonkwo." 3rd time. And now something had shifted in the voice. It was quieter, less commanding, something almost cautious. "My name is Park Joon-ho. I'm not a violent man tonight. But the people who want what is in that case are. And they know you have it too. Please, open the door." She opened the door. Later, she would not be able to fully explain why. Perhaps it was the shift in his voice, that slight fracture in the steel that sounded against all logic like honesty. Perhaps it was the Lagos pragmatism that had been trained into her since childhood. Assess the threat in front of you before you fear the one you're imagining. Perhaps she simply understood, with the cold clarity that fear sometimes gifts you, that if he wanted to break the door down, it would already be broken. He stood in the corridor alone. No muscle. No gun drawn. He was taller than she expected, over 6 feet, in a perfectly fitted charcoal gray suit, dark tie slightly loosened at the collar, dark hair swept back from a face that was, distractingly and inconveniently, extraordinarily handsome. His jaw was sharp, his eyes darker than she expected up close, and he held himself with the particular stillness of someone who had learned, through years of high-stakes living, to never betray urgency through the body. He looked at the briefcase in her arms, then at her face, and something crossed his expression, something that was almost involuntary, a flicker of relief. "You're safe," he said. Came out quieter than he intended. "I don't know that," Adaeze said. Her voice was steadier than she felt. "Who are you? And I mean actually not a name. Who are you?" Was. He glanced once down the corridor, a quick, practiced surveillance sweep, then back at her. May I come inside? Absolutely not. The ghost of something crossed his mouth. Not quite a smile. Almost. Then will you step into the corridor and let me explain? Also no. He exhaled through his nose. Then I will explain from here. He lowered his voice, stepping just close enough to the doorframe to not be overheard from the elevator bank. The case contains intelligence, a hard drive with financial records that connects several powerful men in Seoul to a network of operations that are very illegal and very dangerous. I was transporting it to a contact. At the airport, there was a confusion with the bags. My bag, Adaeze cut in. You had a bag exactly like mine. Same color, same clasp, same everything. I know. It was an unfortunate coincidence. The case is a limited production Italian model. I did not expect to encounter its twin at Incheon. Italian, she repeated, almost to herself. She thought about the Balagan market seller who'd sworn it was imported. Course. The men looking for that drive, Park Joon-ho continued, have already flagged the airport footage. They saw you take the case. They will have your flight information. Possibly your hotel by now. He paused. My team found you in 40 minutes. Theirs will not be much slower. The blood drained from her face. You need to come with me, he said. Now. Tonight. Come with you. She stared at him. A complete stranger, who just told me armed criminals are tracking me. You want me to come with you? Yes. In Seoul. A city I've never been to. Yes. Because I accidentally picked up your briefcase full of spy things and a gun. The gun is registered. I don't care if the gun is registered. She lowered her voice, furious, and pointed a finger at him. You have 60 seconds to give me one reason, one good reason why I should trust you. Park Joon-ho looked at her for a long moment. His expression was unreadable. Then he reached slowly into his inside jacket pocket, keeping the motion visible, deliberate, and produced a slim card holder. He extended a single card toward her. She took it without stepping forward, snatching it from between his fingers. She looked at it. Park Joon-ho Special Investigations Bureau. National Intelligence Service of Korea Classified Operations Division. You're a government agent, she said flatly. Among other things. She looked up. What does that mean? It means my official life and my other life are complicated. And I will explain everything if you let me get you somewhere safe first. He held her gaze. His voice was steady, but his eyes were doing something she couldn't quite categorize. They were asking, not demanding. I have a safe house 20 minutes from here. My car is in the basement garage. I give you my word, and I understand that means nothing to you yet, that you will not be harmed. You have my name. You have my credentials. You can photograph them and send them to everyone you know before we leave. She stared at him. Then she looked down at the briefcase in her arms. Then back at him. Give me 5 minutes to put on clothes, she said. And I'm sending your ID photo to my best friend in Lagos with instructions to send it to every newspaper in Nigeria if she doesn't hear from me in 2 hours. Something that was definitely, this time, a real thing happened at the corner of his mouth. Understood, said Park Joon-ho. 5 minutes. The basement garage of the Lotte City Hotel was gray concrete and bad lighting. Adaeze followed him at a distance of exactly 4 feet, close enough to keep him in sight, far enough to run if she needed to, and watched as he led her to a black Genesis G90, windows tinted dark. He opened the back door for her. She got in. He rounded to the driver's seat himself, no driver, and she registered that, filed it away. If he had wanted company for this, he had chosen not to have it. The car moved out of the garage and into the Seoul night, and Adaeze pressed herself against the door and watched the city unfurl around her. Lit-up streets, Pojangmaka stalls glowing orange in the cold air, a Han River bridge blazing like a string of pearls in the distance. She had come to Seoul to find joy and spontaneity and wonder. She had found all three. In the most deranged way imaginable. Talk, she said. Everything. Now. He drove with one hand on the wheel, relaxed in the way that highly trained people were relaxed, never truly off. And he talked. He told her about the hard drive. A whistleblower, someone deep inside a criminal financial network known internally as Chongya, had passed it to the NIS. The drive contained transaction records, shell company registrations, and the identities of 14 high-ranking figures across business, government, and organized crime who had been laundering money across Southeast Asia for a decade. The transport of the drive had been kept off-book for security reasons. And then a Lagos textile designer had walked off with it at Incheon. Textile designer, he said, and there was something in the way he said it. Curious, almost soft. Is that relevant? She said. No, he said. A pause. I wasn't expecting you. She didn't know what to do with that. And the people coming for the drive, she said. How dangerous. He was quiet for exactly long enough to tell her everything she needed to know before he said, very. She stared at the back of his head. The city scrolled past. She thought about her mother. About the 2 years and 3 months she'd saved. About the tteokbokki sitting half-eaten on her hotel room desk, and the fact that she had technically, by taking that briefcase, become an unwilling player in a Korean intelligence operation. She laughed. It burst out of her before she could stop it. A real laugh, full-bodied, slightly unhinged, the kind of laugh that lives right next to crying. He glanced at her in the rearview mirror, and she could see it in his eyes, the genuine confusion. I'm sorry, she said, pressing her fingers to her lips. I'm sorry this isn't funny. None of this is funny. I came here for holiday. I came for bibimbap and Han River picnics and those little convenience store triangle kimbap and maybe, if I was feeling adventurous, a day trip to Jeju. And instead I am in an unmarked government car fleeing actual criminals with a man whose name I learned 20 minutes ago. She pressed her hand harder over her mouth. My mother is going to kill me. If the mafia doesn't do it first. He looked at her in the mirror again. And this time what lived in his expression was something warm. Something that had not been there before. We are not going to let the mafia do it, he said quietly. We, she repeated. You said we. I did. She looked at him. He looked at the road. Outside, Seoul blazed and glittered and hummed, 6 million people going about their Thursday evening, completely unaware that inside one dark Genesis G90, something had shifted between two strangers, something small and electric and entirely inconvenient. The safe house was in Mapogu, a quiet neighborhood that felt like it exhaled compared to Myeongdong's relentless energy. The building was an unmarked 4-story walk-up that could have been apartments, a small office, anything. He led her to the second floor, unlocked a steel-reinforced door with a 6-digit code and a thumbprint, and she stepped into a space that surprised her. It was warm. Not sterile like she'd expected. Not the gray wall bunker of every spy movie she'd ever seen. There were bookshelves, a reading lamp burning amber in the corner, a small kitchen that smelled faintly of coffee, a wooden table by the window where someone had, a while ago, clearly been reading a novel face down, spine cracked, abandoned mid-chapter. You've been here before, she said. Recently. I use it often, he said. It is the closest thing I have to. He stopped. Home, she said. He looked at her, and for the first time since she'd opened that hotel room door, something unguarded moved across his face. Surprise at being read so precisely by a person he'd known for less than an hour. Yes, he said. Simply. He set her up at the kitchen table, brought her hot barley tea. She wrapped both hands around the mug and nearly wept with gratitude, and sat across from her with a laptop open between them. He showed her what he could. Fragments of the operation. The faces of the people they needed to worry about. She studied them like she was memorizing a pattern, which, as a textile designer, was exactly what she was trained to do. You're not panicking anymore, he observed. I'm panicking on the inside, she said without looking up from the screen. I've just decided it's not helping. He watched her for a moment longer than was strictly necessary. They worked through the night in a way that surprised them both. A strange, unlikely collaboration. She had questions that were sharp and practical. He had answers he gave more freely than he expected to give them. At some point around 2 a.m., she picked up the abandoned novel from beside the window and raised an eyebrow at him. Norwegian Wood, she said. Murakami. You know it. I wrote my undergraduate thesis on Murakami. He set it down. You're full of surprises, Mr. Park. Joon-ho, he said. She looked at him. You can call me Joon-ho, he said, as if clarifying something purely practical. As if it did not mean anything at all. Adaeze, she said. He tried it once, quietly, like he was testing the sound of it. The way he said it, careful, respectful, getting all 4 syllables right, made something small and stubborn crack open behind her ribs. She looked away. Outside, Seoul kept its nighttime hum. And in that warm, amber-lit room, over cold cases and hot tea and a Murakami novel and the low, persistent heartbeat of real danger, 2 people who had no business being in the same universe began to learn the shape of each other. They came at 4:17 in the morning. The alert came through Joon-ho's secondary phone first. A single vibration, a code. He was on his feet before Adaeze had fully processed what was happening, moving to the window, scanning the street below with a small device she didn't recognize. We have to move, he said. How? She was already standing, already reaching for her tote bag with the reflexes of a woman who had navigated Lagos traffic and power outages and the particular daily chaos of a city that demanded you be ready for anything. There is a car in the service alley. We go down the fire stairs, out the back, and we do not stop. The briefcase. I have it. He had it in his left hand already. His right hand holding the secondary phone. He looked at her once. A look that lasted maybe 2 seconds and communicated something neither of them had the vocabulary for yet, and then he opened the reinforced door and they moved. The stairwell was dark and smelled of cold concrete. Their footsteps were quick and controlled. Below them, she heard the main building entrance, a sound like something asserting itself against a lock. Her heart was a fist hammering the inside of her chest. They hit the service alley at a run. The car was a silver Kia, old model, anonymous. He got them in and moving before she'd fully closed her door, and the city swallowed them. Narrow backstreets, then a main road, then the broad gray expanse of an empty pre-dawn boulevard. She pressed both palms flat on her thighs and breathed. You do this often, she said. Not a question. Run from people. Was. More than I'd like. Does it scare you? He was quiet for a moment. It used to. She turned to look at his profile. The jaw, the focused eyes, the hands on the wheel. What changed? Another silence. Longer this time. The kind where the answer exists but is deciding whether it trusts the air enough to live in it. I stopped having things worth being scared for, he said. And then, he stopped. She waited. He glanced at her. Drive, she said softly. You can finish that sentence when we're safe. They reached a NIS operations point near Uedo just before sunrise. A proper facility this time, staffed, secure, buzzing with the quiet controlled urgency of a team that had been up all night. Men and women in dark clothes moved through glass-walled rooms. Screens glowed with maps and data. Adaeze sat in a side office wrapped in a thermal blanket someone had provided with the efficient, impersonal kindness of people trained for crisis. She drank coffee that tasted like salvation. She answered questions from a serious-faced agent named Kim for 40 minutes. Patiently, precisely, never once breaking despite the adrenaline still humming through her bloodstream. When Kim finally left, Joon-ho came in. He had taken off his jacket at some point. His sleeves were rolled to the elbow, and he looked, for the first time since she'd met him at that hotel room door, like someone who had spent the night doing the thing he described as normal. He sat in the chair across from her. It's over, he said. The drive is where it needs to be. The men who came to the building last night, 2 of them are in custody. The others have pulled back. She let out a breath that seemed to come from somewhere below her lungs. You're safe, he said. She looked at him across the table in the gray-blue light of a Korean morning just beginning to push through the window, and she said, You said you'd finish your sentence when we were safe. He looked at her steadily. I said I stopped having things worth being scared for. And then tonight happened. And I was scared the entire time. The room was very quiet. Because of the operation? She asked, already knowing the answer wasn't yes. No, he said. The light was strengthening outside. Seoul was waking up, that massive, muscular, endlessly energetic city beginning its daily declaration of existence. And in a small side office near Uedo, an African woman who had come for holiday and found something she hadn't been looking for, and a Korean intelligence operative who had forgotten what it felt like to be frightened of losing something, sat across from each other in the new morning. I still haven't seen a single tourist thing, Adaeze said finally. Something broke across his face then. Fully, completely, the way a window breaks and suddenly there is air and light where there was none. He laughed. Real laugh. The kind that sounded like it had been kept somewhere dark and dry for a long time and was surprised to find itself out. I know every corner of this city, he said. She tilted her head. Is that so? I know where the best sunrises are. And the best jjajangmyeon. And, he stopped, steadied himself, looked at her carefully. I know I have no right to ask. You came here for holiday. You nearly got. He stopped again. I nearly got killed in the most interesting way possible, she said. And I got to read your Murakami, drink your tea, and find out that Korean intelligence operatives have feelings, so. She shrugged, affecting lightness over something that was decidedly not light. The trip is going better than planned. He leaned forward, both elbows on the table, his eyes on hers. Adaeze. Her name in his voice again. Careful. Complete. Joon-ho. Equally careful. Equally complete. Would you when you've slept, and eaten, and recovered from all of this? He paused, and she watched the composure he wore like armor do something genuinely remarkable. It softened. Would you let me show you Seoul? The real one. Not as a. He gestured vaguely at the building around them. Not like this. She looked at him for a long moment. Then Adaeze Okonkwo, who had saved for 2 years, 3 months and 11 days, who had packed the wrong bag out of a Lagos market, who had accidentally walked into a Korean intelligence operation with a gun and a hard drive and somehow walked out the other side with her heartbeat changed. Smiled. I have 12 days left, she said. His answering smile was slow and quiet and absolutely devastating. 12 days, he said, like he was counting something precious. Outside, Seoul blazed into morning. The Han River caught the first real light and threw it back at the sky. Somewhere across the city, at a hotel in Myeongdong, a room sat empty with half-eaten tteokbokki going cold on a desk. And 2 people who should never have shared the same carousel, the same corridor, the same impossible night, leaned toward each other across a table in the newborn light, and began the strangest, most inconvenient, most beautiful thing either of them had ever made the mistake of starting. 3 months later. The message arrived on a Thursday evening. Chisholm was in her Lagos apartment, watching a Nollywood rerun and eating suya, when her phone lit up with a video call from Adaeze. She picked up, expecting her friend's face. Instead she got Adaeze, and beside her, dark-eyed and slightly awkward in the frame in the way of people not used to being on camera, a very tall, very handsome Korean man who was holding Adaeze's hand like it was something he intended to keep doing. Chisholm screamed. She screamed for approximately 30 seconds without stopping. Adaeze. Adaeze, who is this man? Adaeze, I told you to go for holiday, not to come back with a. His name is Joon-ho, Adaeze said, laughing. And it is a very long story. Joon-ho raised his free hand in a small, slightly nervous wave. Hello, he said. Chisholm pointed at the camera. Ooh. You better treat my friend like the queen she is. He looked at Adaeze then. Looked at her the way he'd been looking at her since the morning in that Uedo office, like she was the most unexpected and necessary thing that had ever happened to him. I intend to, he said quietly. Chisholm screamed again. And somewhere in Seoul, through a window above a city that hummed and blazed and never slept, the last of the winter light turned gold. The same shade, almost exactly, as a wine-dark briefcase spinning on a carousel at Incheon, waiting to redirect the entire course of 2 lives. Some bags are never just bags. Some wrong turns are the most right ones you'll ever take. And some love stories begin not with a glance across a room, but with the exact, catastrophic, life-altering click of a borrowed clasp.